You can hear me fine? We're making a little adjustment here. Good morning. My name is Tom Lojudas. I use he, him pronouns. I serve this congregation in connection circles and also on the leadership development team. I am leading this morning's service as a worship associate. Welcome to our special place. At the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Quad Cities, we welcome all people into our beloved community of whatever age, race, class, ethnicity, physical ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religious background. We welcome especially those of you who are joining us for the first time. We invite everyone to join us downstairs after the service for coffee, snacks, and of course, conversation. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. I'm Lori O'Dell McCullum, and I'm the chair this year. Our guest speaker today is Bridget Laflin. She graduated with her Master's of Divinity from Seattle University in 2022. She moved to Iowa last August with her husband, adult daughter, and 3 cats to finish her training as a ministerial intern at the Unitarian Universalist Society in Coralville. She's also serving as a chaplain intern at the University of Iowa Hospitals. In her spare time, of which I can't imagine there's very much, she's a Lego artist and self-proclaimed Star Trek geek.
As Lori said, I'm Bridget. I use she, her pronouns. Our opening words are from Chip Rausch, entitled Transfiguring Love. Deeper than DNA, more fundamental than molecules or quarks at our living core, we are wholeness and transfiguring love. We often forget that power, becoming lonely or resentful, comparing ourselves to others, acting out our fears rather than living our glory. Occasionally, we rouse from our trance to remember our wholeness. For a time, we embody unsentimental love. We make efforts to wake others and to remain fully present ourselves. Our lives and our time here together are made sacred by our striving. For the next 60 minutes and for the rest of our lives, may we be more aware of the spirit of life evolving through and among us. So may we be. As Tom lights our chalice, let's all recite our chalice lighting words together. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to inspire. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening song, number 146, Soon the Day Will Arrive. The lyrics are also projected on the screen. Okay, yes, he'll play it through once before we sing. I think it's a newer hymn for us.
You may remain standing. In the spirit of love and fellowship, we now greet the holy in our midst by briefly greeting those around us, especially those we do not know.
Hi, you all know the drill. You came up right away. Tiffany is out sick today, so I am going to be reading the story as well. This story is called I Am Love, a book of compassion by Susan Verde, art by Peter H. Reynolds. When I see someone going through a storm, of hurt and unfairness, of anger and sadness, when the sun disappears and the skies grow dark, and I see there is fear, I ask myself, what can I do to help let the light back in? I put my hands on my heart and listen. And that is where I find the answer. I have compassion. I act with tenderness. Do any of you know what compassion means? It's when you feel what other people are feeling and you want to help them. I am love. I can listen and not say a word. I can be there. Love is being present. I can hug and hold and say, everything will be all right. Love is comfort. I can speak softly and choose my words and actions carefully. Love is gentle. I can give thanks for all I have and am able to share. Love is gratitude. I can keep my mind and body safe and healthy. Love is taking care of me. I can express what's important to me. Love is creative. I can know that no one is perfect. Love is understanding. I can do my best to make things better. When something's wrong, love is effort. I can celebrate those I've loved before. Love is remembering. I can find goodness in a kind word, a helping hand, or a shared smile. Love is tiny gestures. I can breathe in the air that the whole world shares and know all creatures are made from the very same stardust. Love is connection. When the clouds roll in for others and for me, I know now there's something I can do. I can let my heart lead the way. I am love. You are love. We are love. And with love, we will weather the storm and light up the sky together. The end. And now we'll sing our children out to their religious education classes.
Good morning. I am Susan Perry, a member of the Pastoral Care Associates Ministry team. As we gather today, we pause to reflect on what lies within our hearts. In this time of sharing, we take a moment to recognize our personal joys and concerns and to read from the book of joys and concerns, those personal life events you have chosen to share with us. There is one concern listed in the book from Anne Marie and Daryl Toady. With heavy hearts, we are remembering our daughter Chelsea. February 1st would have been her 50th birthday. May she rest in peace and love. Are there any online concerns? Thank you. Any joys? Thank you again. There are two joys in the book. Anne Marie and Daryl also say thank you to all who have provided support and comfort during our time of despair. Darcy Anderson thanks Jeff and Adrian Banks for their donation of a foosball table downstairs. For what has been shared and for what remains in the quiet sanctuary of our hearts, we are grateful. Let us become aware of the energy that brings us together in beloved community as we share a time of silent meditation. May we open our minds and hearts to a place of quiet, to a silent prayer for the healing of pain and the comfort of love. You are invited to come forward and light a candle during the musical meditation that follows.
This congregation is a theologically diverse religious community with membership open to all who are in accord with our values, mission, values, and vision. Our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and institutional well-being. This month's undesignated plate offerings will go toward Alan's house. Alan's house, as you will read in your program, is named after Alan Egley, who was a minister of this church and who was a friend to many. I knew Alan when he served as a mentor to my wife, who ministered at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Dubuque. He was just a wonderful person. Read more about Alan. We invite you now to participate in the blessing of giving. As the ushers come among you, accept the gifts of the congregation. Please be as generous as you are able. Beautiful. For all the gifts of time and treasure that you give to this congregation, with sincere gratitude, we thank you.
This reading comes from an excerpt from Wishful Thinking by Frederick Buechner. When Jesus said to love your neighbor, a lawyer who was present asked him to clarify what he meant by neighbor. He wanted a legal definition he could refer to in case the question of loving one ever came up. He presumably wanted something on the order of a neighbor, hereinafter referred to as the party of the first part, is to be construed as meaning a person of Jewish descent whose legal residence is within a radius of no more than 3 statute miles from one's own legal residence, unless there is another person of Jewish descent, hereinafter referred to as the party of the second part, living closer to the party of the first part than one is oneself, in which case the party of the second part is to be construed as neighbor to the party of the first part, and one is oneself relieved of all responsibility of any sort or kind whatsoever. Instead, Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan, Luke 10:25-37. The point of which seems to be that your neighbor is to be construed as meaning anybody who needs you. The lawyer's response is left unrecorded. So the Soul Matters theme for February is inclusion. To me, and I'm sure to some of you, inclusion feels like a very heavy topic in our current world, where the politics of exclusion seem to be the fashion of the day. I'm going to talk today about how our Unitarian Universalist values call us to love all of our neighbors. Yep, even those neighbors. Those two. And now some of you may be thinking, universal love for all people, sure. Wonderful goal. Totally unrealistic, of course, but a perfectly reasonable topic for a not yet ordained minister who probably hasn't lost her idealism yet. Well, I admit, it is an idealistic goal. It's aspirational. And I believe that as a people of faith, we are called to try to achieve this universal love. In our Unitarian Universalist faith, we hold some shared values. One of them is the value of equity. As Unitarian Universalists, we declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. Every single person. Another one of our shared values is interdependence, which explains why the inherent worth and dignity of every person is so important. We humbly acknowledge our place within the interdependent web of all existence, and we covenant to work to repair harm and damaged relationships. We are a part of everything that exists, and everything that exists is a part of us. And we are all dependent on one another. We cannot exist separate from the rest of the world. Like it or not, we are bound together. The Hindu sage Ramana Maharshi was once asked, "How shall I treat others?" And he answered, "There are no others." As difficult as this is to wrap our minds around, we are inextricably bound together, and so much of our separateness is an illusion. It's easier to see the evils of the world as separate from ourselves and to claim the good for personal victory. But we are all like waves in the ocean. Each wave is unique, but ultimately still a part of the ocean. And those people that we can't imagine loving, they too are part of our ocean. One of my role models is the Reverend Fred Rogers. Most of us know him as Mr. Rogers from his long-running television show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood on PBS. Fred Rogers was an ordained Presbyterian minister, but he was never pastor to a congregation. He combined his musical talent with his studies in early childhood development and ministry and created a TV show for children that spoke to them on their own level, reminded them that they were special and loved just the way they are, helped them to feel their feelings, and talked to them about the issues happening in the world in a way that they could understand. And the basis for all of his work was simple. Love your neighbor as yourself. As a Christian minister, Fred Rogers took those words of Jesus to heart. He firmly believed that loving God and your neighbor were the most important things a person could do. He believed in love. As Mr. Rogers said, love is at the root of everything. All learning, all relationships. Love or the lack of it. This theme of loving your neighbor as yourself is common to almost every religion. In the United States, Jesus gets a lot of credit for it, and it did form the basis of his teachings, but Jesus was Jewish. And when he was asked which laws were most important, he quoted ancient Jewish teachings from the Torah. So although Jesus often gets credit for the whole love your neighbor as yourself thing, it was actually a teaching that had been around for centuries before he was born. And almost every religion in the world has a similar teaching. It's one of the few ideas that is shared universally around the world. So it seems like a pretty important thing. But who are our neighbors? And how do we practice this teaching of loving them? There's a message I've seen in various iterations on social media and on t-shirts. It's up there. It reads, "Love thy neighbor, thy homeless neighbor, thy Muslim neighbor, thy black neighbor, thy gay neighbor, thy immigrant neighbor, thy Jewish neighbor, thy Christian neighbor, thy atheist neighbor, thy disabled neighbor, thy addicted neighbor." And when I first saw it, I liked that message a lot. After all, I agree with all of it. I think we should love all our neighbors. And many of the people listed on the shirt are historically marginalized and do not get the respect and love that they deserve in our society. And the reminder to love our neighbors is important. So what was it about that shirt that really bothered me? After some reflection, I figured out what it was. The t-shirt was designed as a reaction to a form of extreme right-wing evangelical Christianity that often sends messages of hate to the people listed on that shirt. So there's an element of reproach in the message. What if the shirt read, "Love thy neighbor, thy evangelical neighbor, thy Republican neighbor, thy NRA member neighbor, thy pro-life neighbor, thy Fox News watching neighbor, thy Make America Great Again neighbor"? How does it change? Can I still love all my neighbors? How would I feel about it if I saw someone wearing that second shirt? It doesn't feel so good when the criticism's aimed at me. Think about how easy it would be to write off a person wearing such a shirt as ignorant or ridiculous and hateful. It would be pretty easy to shake my head and internally just dismiss them. And I realized that this is exactly the way many conservative people would feel about me if I wore the first t-shirt. The message isn't wrong, but the tone discourages curiosity and conversation and connection rather than inviting it. So how exactly do we love our neighbors? Back to Mr. Rogers. Fred Rogers once said in a commencement speech, "Anyone who has ever been able to sustain a good work has had at least one person, and often many, who have believed in them." We just don't get to be competent human beings without many different investments from others. In fact, from the time you were very little, you've had people who have smiled you into smiling, people who have talked you into talking, people who have sung you into singing, and loved you into loving. End quote. And the same is true for people who have been formed by fear and hurt and anger. We just don't get to be the people that we are without the influences of other people. They have had people in their lives who have frightened them into fear, bullied them into bullying, hurt them into hurting, angered them into fighting, and hated them into hating. I believe we must be the people who show them there is a different way to live, a happier, freer way to live. I believe Mr. Rogers was right. We don't get to be competent human beings without many different investments from other people. No one who has ever been able to sustain a good work has done so without at least one person, and probably many, who believed in them. So if we want others to change, we must be willing to invest in them. We must be willing to believe in them and in their ability to change. We can't simply write them off or ignore them or wear snarky t-shirts or make social media posts. We must attempt to form relationships with our neighbors. We must be the people who smile them into smiling, talk them into talking, trust them into trusting, forgive them into forgiving, and love them into loving. Wendy Farley wrote a book called Tragic Vision and Divine Compassion. In it, she says, compassion labors to make whole human beings out of broken ones. As Unitarian Universalists, we are a people of faith. And as people of faith, we are called not only to resist evil when we see it in the world, but we are called to do so with compassion. And that compassion piece, that is what makes it so hard. We must labor to make whole human beings out of the broken ones. We must not allow our righteous anger to cross over into hatred. We must maintain a sense of compassion for those people we are resisting. We must allow for the possibility that they are broken human beings and that through compassion, they can be made whole. Some of you are probably still skeptical. I get it. What about the people that we know? What about the people who have hurt us? What about people who hate us? How can we possibly love them? And I admit that can be even more difficult. But remember that universal love is not a universal acceptance of wrongdoing. We do not need to be tolerant of harm. As anyone who has worked with children knows, setting boundaries and making sure that actions have appropriate consequences are also ways of showing love. After the terrorist violence that broke out at a white nationalist rally in Charlottesville in the August of 2017, the Reverend Julian Soto published the following on social media. No, absolutely not for Nazis, but not hate, just no. It's the same way you can't use my toothbrush. No, just no. Boundaries aren't hate. And resistance isn't hate. Friends, part of this universal agape love is loving yourself. And that means that you need to set boundaries to keep yourself safe and healthy. If there are particular people that it is not safe for you to interact with, don't. The beauty of beloved community is that we as individuals don't have to work with every other individual human being. If there are people that threaten your physical or mental health and well-being, leave it to others in your community to engage with them. And if you are a person who can safely show love, kindness, and compassion to people who are a danger to others, then consider that perhaps that is the work you are called to. Set the boundaries you need to protect yourself. Resist the evil things in the world, but try to do so from a place of love, not hate. Remember, boundaries aren't hate, and resistance isn't hate. All of the religions of the world teach us to love our neighbors, all of our neighbors, especially the ones that aren't easy to love. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them. That doesn't mean condoning a person's violence, hatred, or oppression, but we need to find a way to fight and resist those things without taking on the traits of those we are fighting. When faced with violence, It is an instinct to react with more violence. When attacked with hatred, it is natural to react with hatred. When we're scared, we lash out. But we must break these cycles. Left unchecked, hate feeds hate. Violence generates violence, and fear creates more fear. As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. As people of faith and conviction, we must hold ourselves to a higher standard. We can and should rise up against injustice and hatred, but we need to oppose that hatred and injustice with love. And that love needs to include not just the people who are being oppressed, but also the oppressors. We must make it clear that injustice must end, but we need to do so in a way that makes it clear that we have not forgotten that all people are inherently worthy of love. Nothing a person does can invalidate that. For if we fight hatred with more hatred, the battle will never end. So that's our challenge, to love all of our neighbors, to form a community where people can heal and grow and know they are loved unconditionally just because they exist. That's not easy, but I believe we are up to the challenge because we are a people centered in love. So may it be. And now please rise and body your spirit for our closing song. In the gray hymnal, number 318, We Would Be One. The lyrics will also be projected on the screen. Please remain lifted up as we extinguish the chalice and join in the unison reading on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
This is the period in our service for announcements. If you have an announcement for the Sunday service, please send it to the office at uucqc.org by 12 noon on Thursday before the service. We have a few announcements. The adult religious education program titled UU Values and You, which features the new Article 2 from UUA. This morning before the service at 9 o'clock, the adult religious education team began the first of 7 discussion forums in which we explored the first of our 6 values, transformation. All are welcome next Sunday, 9 o'clock to 9:45, as Reverend Sabrina leads us in examining the value of pluralism. Childcare is provided. Zoom will be available if requested. Second announcement, the RE team is asking for donation of soups and desserts for the Valentine's Day Dance fundraiser for Youth RE. It would be good if there are some vegetarian and gluten-free options. Please help us label things and mark any common allergens. Food drop-off for the Valentine's Day dance will be 3 to 4 p.m. on Saturday, February the 8th. We're also happy to have help at the dance that evening. Tiffany Kaldenbach can be reached at re@uucqc.org. Our next RE team meeting will be on Wednesday, February the 12th in the boardroom from 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. We encourage people to come in person. We will continue to meet the second Wednesday of each month. If there are any announcements from the congregation, please rise, give your name, and use your public voice for your announcement. Yes.
We're having the annual celebration tonight at 5 o'clock on better conditions.
Thank you. Oh.
Tonight at 5 o'clock, we're having the invoke ceremony and potluck here at 5 o'clock.
Invoke ceremony at 5 o'clock, right here.
Yeah, it's Great Tradition Suite.
Yes, go ahead.
Also, another thing that's happening this evening, I'm just gonna put this out here. At First Presbyterian, there is a justice choir that has started up, working on migrant justice. That's gonna be 5:30 to 7, I believe.
Is that a rehearsal or a concert?
It is a rehearsal, yes.
Justice Choir will be rehearsing at First Presbyterian Church at
Correct.
5:30.
In the concert that will happen to participate. So,
And thank you both for your public voice.
yeah.
And thank you for your beautiful voice all the time. Other announcements. Make sure to read the announcements that are on the back of the service. We will now have closing words.
Our closing words come from Emily Richards. May you leave this time together changed. May the promises you have made to yourself about who you want to be feel closer to the reality of who you really are right now. May you share that feeling of transformation wherever you go. May it spread into every word, deed, thought, and interaction until we are all changed, transformed, and transforming together, becoming our better selves. Go in peace. and you may remain seated for the postlude.
The clouds hang low and the rains do fall, and everybody sings a little blues after all. But our love rolls on. The skies grow dark and the winds do blow, and counting on tomorrow is at best touch and go. But our love rolls on. Our love rolls on. You and I have a reason to try. We'll make it over the hill. We survive and our love is alive, 'cause our love grows stronger still, and it always will. So it's rain or shine as the fates decide, and even if some trouble comes along for the ride, still our love rolls on. Our love rolls on. We can rise above it, 'cause our love rolls on and on and on.